The psalm tells us that when Jesus mounted the throne, everyone cried with shouts of joy. The gospel we just heard said that people were so joyful when Jesus ascended that they just went to the temple and were continually praising God. And I have to be honest, had I been alive then, I don't know if that would have been my reaction. I don't know if I would have been one of them. I would have been like, wait a minute, the conclusion of the gospel, according to Luke, the conclusion, he leaves? Maybe I'm the only one here with abandonment issues, but it always has struck me that that's scary. We met the one who taught us how to live life, how life makes sense, who healed the sick, who did endless miracles, who spoke a truth so sublime we'd never heard anything like it before. Suddenly life made sense. Suddenly we felt guided and loved and protected. And then he goes. It's hard. It's hard. And it's necessary that he did that. It's necessary because Jesus now is invisible to us. And that's really important because it teaches us something that we have to know. Although the world that we can see is real, although we live in a real world that can be measured by the gifts of science, a world that follows certain laws designed by our Maker, the world we can see, as real as it is not as real as the invisible world that contains it. There's an invisible world that is bigger and more real than the world we can see. In fact, the world that we can see is a subset of that bigger, more real world. That's why it's really important that Jesus is the center of our lives, yet we've never seen him. His ascension brought the visible world and the invisible world together. And ever since then, we have been aware of a world that is the most important part of our lives, even though we can't see it. We can't use our five senses to go there. I was very close with a woman in my last parish who had lost her husband not long before I arrived. And she told me about the day that he became invisible, the day that he went home to God. She said he had had a long illness and he was in the hospital, but no one expected him to go very quickly. They thought they had time. So she was visiting him there by the hospital bed, as she had so many times before. And she said to him, well, I'm going to get going. I'm going to leave now. And he said, I'm going too. And she said, where do you think you're going? He said, wherever you are. His last words to his wife. He couldn't have said it better. That's what St. John Chrysostom, the great theologian and speaker of ancient times, said. He said, when someone we love dies, they are no longer where we are. Now, they're anywhere we go. A person who dies is no longer in the spot that they were. They're now everywhere that we could possibly be. That would make no sense to us, the visible becoming invisible, if it hadn't been for the ascension. The ascension is when Jesus opened a little tiny portal, a little opening, not big enough for us to see through, but big enough for all of us to travel through. And because he taught us in doing that about the invisible world, it means that now everything has meaning. I had a funeral a few years ago for a man who died way out of season. He was in his early 50s. He had kids that absolutely adored him. I know many of you have had losses in your own life that feel completely out of season. And it was one of those funerals with his wife who was just so sad. And I felt so connected to that grief. To my horror, the incense burned a little hotter than normal that day. And the smoke was a little thicker than it normally would be. And during the Lord's Prayer, the fire alarm went off. Not just any fire alarm, but one of those new up-to-code ones that flashes strobe lights on all the people. And it makes that like whooping sound. It's not a bell like you used to hear during the fire drills in school. It's a whoop, 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 and only the fire department can turn it off. It went through half of communion. I was horrified. And as the funeral was leaving, I said to his wife, his widow, I am so sorry. I don't even know what to say. That's never happened before. She said, Father, that was Gary. He loved gags. I have never felt so close to him. When that fire alarm went off, I said, thank you, God, for bringing him right here. See, once you know about the invisible world, you know that there doesn't need to be a point to something for it to be filled with meaning. It doesn't have to be obvious to us that there's something beyond what we can see, because we've learned in a fundamental way, the invisible world is what counts. The invisible world is bigger and more real than this one. Earlier today, we had a 12:10 Mass for all the people who work in the area. They came and it was really full. They filled the pews. We also had the K to 8th grade students here from SMSA, and so the church was packed. So right in the middle of my homily, in flew a bat. And it circled the crowd. And then it went back and landed on a picture of our parish founder. So they tried to capture him or her with the collection basket. But it didn't work. So it flew back, and then it was hiding right here by the column. And everybody was captured with it. And I said to the assembly that at that Mass just a few hours ago, I don't know who needed this. I have no idea for whom this is a message. But all of us can touch into the invisible world right now. Because in this crowd of, at that Mass, maybe 200 people, somebody needed this today. And God sent a beautiful gift from heaven for whoever it was. Most of us won't know that. It might actually be because of the ways of the invisible world. It may be that more than one person got more than one meaning from it. But because of Ascension, we know that what really matters is not what we can see. It's from the world beyond. All of us are absolutely overwhelmed with abandonment feelings when someone we love goes from the visible world to the invisible world. It seems impossible. In fact, that's why experts tell us denial is the first thing you feel. It can't possibly be true. But we are called to have the kind of faith that overcomes the denials of those who only believe in what they can see and connect with their five senses. We are being called to connect to that place where our most important loved one and all the people we've ever loved live in glory. We are called to connect with the realm of heaven that is more real and much larger than the realm of earth. It all comes from God, but there's a world bigger than this one that God made. And that's what Ascension Day is all about.